That's a 40 slip. Go ahead.
No, I mean, no, I was just, yeah.
No, but yeah, because the county is the sponsor of the bond, so it ultimately comes back to the county council. But what we're trying to do is create the most fair process possible. But if for some reason
Heidi said good faith.
it falls through, I guess it ultimately falls on our shoulders.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, whenever the money gets involved, there's always going to be activities, Steve. Always. It's, you know, everyone's going to have a lot of different agendas on the place they love and they want to see
That's where the
saved.
rubber really hits the road, is when you come right down to
Yeah,
spending.
but I don't want to have a minority contributor, municipality, hold up the whole process.
Majority. But I think the bylaws, I think you're onto something there where we could kind of specify, you know, the way they do it, I don't know if this is a good example or not, but the way they do it on the Power and Light Company is they have a party-only vote where the people, you know, Kendall, the ones that own the certain percentages, and here we're getting to taxable percentages.
They've never
they
pulled
vote.
that vote on me, but
Oh, we did once.
they could.
Yeah.
We did once.
They voted on me.
And- Yes, and so
Good times.
you get a vote according to your percentage, and maybe that's an idea that, hey, if you can get over 50% based on his taxable percentage vote on the Open Lands Board, you know, then maybe, then the minority can't hold it up, is what I'm saying. But if they want a certain percentage in their own city, then they make their own board, right? And they meet the criteria.
Part of the issue, though, was what it ultimately comes down to is what Steve just said. The Open Lands Board is truly an advisory board. It's not a governing board. It's to the county council. And I think that's where I guess if we get to a final portion, depends on the bylaws, but that's just an advisory council to the county. And then the county, it takes 4 votes of the county council to decide where that money is going to be apportioned. Is that correct, Steve?
Mm-hmm.
Which it should be the most fair for the whole county is concerned, because we are representing our own little portions and then to a large. So it should, in theory, be the most equal way to do it. I understand the concerns.
You know, we didn't give this Open Land Board any ability to spend the money, because when you do that, and Scott will add, I hope, add to it, that creates another whole nother gamut of.
But that all has to be specified in the bond plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a whole
I don't
different
think you can delegate that responsibility, correct?
No, you're asking for financial requirements and budget.
Well, whatever they come up with, when we put it on the ballot, we still got to decide whether we're going to sponsor that bond as a council or whether we're going to require the citizens to.
Is there a, I'm sorry, Ken. From these revisions that Heber suggested, is there anything that's a deal breaker for anybody on the council today?
I still have a problem with Section 2. I don't have a problem with Section 3 if the city would,
If they like to do it?
want them. I don't have a problem with Section 4 if they follow the same criteria everybody else and create their Open Land Board, come up with the criteria that benefits them. Section 5, I would like to leave that to the board to make that determination, whether we go to a private WOLB yet, or and look at all the aspects, because there's a cost involved when you have a private holder of conservation easements.
But do they charge a cost to
Yes, they
take on
do.
the easement? See, I wasn't aware of that.
Yes, they do.
I thought they were more than willing to take on these easements with
there's
their
a
private
cost.
funding. What's the cost?
I don't know what it is. I think I don't know how they determine it.
I guess it's expensive for them to maintain
No.
the easements there.
Well, they don't maintain it. All they do is identify and tell the holder of the land what needs to be done.
But I think they do go back and check and make sure that it's still being used as,
And they go back, there's a cost. They don't do it for nothing.
but I think it brings a third-party credibility to when you talk about all these political leaders and all this money and how to decide the
But
money.
That's why I think, Tracy, it'd be good for the board to make that decision
Well, can the
and come
board,
back with a recommendation.
can the board become a 501c3 organization to hold these conservation easements that is separate from your council, separate from our city councils, so that there's not the pressure on them to rezone in the future?
I think once you put it on there and you put a deed restriction on the property, that eliminates the possibility of rezoning it.
It's set for life.
Yeah.
What's your concern?
I think in the easement, you want to spell out all the uses you want to put it to it.
So who would hold the easement then? Your body?
That would be something determined by the school.
We've got a piece of open space that we've never concluded that easement, because every time we've looked at, 4 versions, and every time the one that's given that has more restrictions on it than we as a council. And we never did determine who was gonna hold the fee title and who was gonna hold the easement.
I think they put so many restrictions on it, we recommend they go to a third party to hold it.
So too.
But was that
That's
the
a red light.
individual landowner then?
Huh?
The individual developer?
It's a piece of our red ledges. There was an open space piece out there that was to be given to the county.
But
And we never did
Regis-
determine who was gonna hold fee title and who was gonna hold the easement.
Well, I think that that's come to our city council, and I think that we've told them it needs to be an outside party, as I recall. But they're the ones that are, the red ledges trying to, right, no hunting, no grazing. that
Every
kind
time
of
it
thing.
came to us, they had more restrictions on it. So we've never finished it.
And if we were the holder of the easement, then we'd be responsible to take care of that third-party review. We'd be responsible to do all the weed spraying, maintenance.
Well, shouldn't there be in the bylaws then, because I don't know if you want to put it in this agreement, but shouldn't there be operations and maintenance funding in perpetuity for every single easement, depending on the size, so that that can be done, you know,
And I
in the
think legally
future?
that can be done, can it not, Scott?
But it has
I think so. I think we ought
What's
to.
the question?
Well, if we buy a piece of property and put a conservation easement on it, we can specify that to run the life of the property, do we not?
Yeah, if you buy a piece of ground, you can put a conservation easement on it, and you can determine the conditions of the easement.
So I think what we ought to do is if you have Mr. Farrell's concerns, we have your concerns, we ought to try and put a board together between the two of us,
Sure. And I
get working on the bylaws and work through some of these issues that we're talking about now before we ever.
okay,
Have we
but,
heard back from Midway yet, Steve?
right.
Yeah,
I think we.
yeah.
What-
Did you say the red stuff on here was theirs?
Yeah, that was the only thing they thought.
That section,
So could we create the board and on one of our upcoming meetings, or do you want to get the feel from the council with the concerns you have here? Do you think we'd be okay to move forward with the board
Like I say,
and start working on it?
oh, I think we can definitely move forward. The Section 3 was the deal breaker. They did not want the county appointing the city's representatives.
If that's the only deal breaker we got, does anybody have any issue with them? Like you said, let's make sure they do it.
I thought
This is important.
giving them 30 days was adequate to
They should be.
get
that's
something.
2 council
They
meetings.
should be, but you know, it always depends on the executive branch and how they're juggling things and what they decide. Because maybe, you know, maybe we could specify
I
in
have
there
no problem
that
taking-
if
I don't-
if you could specify in there that it's not just the mayor who appoints, because usually mayors have appointment power. Maybe you could specify that it's the legislative. Well, I'm just saying, that's a second way for the
I'm all
legislative
right
branch
taking
to
that
do it.
requirement out.
Yeah, let's take that out and you guys can, will you try and,
Yes, yes.
if we're good with that, you can push to get somebody appointed in the next,
Right.
or ask if they'll
And,
push.
and for Section 2, if you want to suggest in the bylaws, there could be like this party-only vote that I suggested with Heber Light and Power, and that every board member would be able to vote according to their percentage of property tax base, so to speak. And then if you get over the 51%, you know, it's accepted on the board, so the minority can't hold it up.
Even on the just doing bylaws, and, or are you talking about when we get to bond?
That's just for this,
For every-
about how everybody should approve the board's work, because I don't know what you'll...
There's going to be 2 at-large seats on that.
That would be every
They don't get to vote?
board's work. That means bylaws.
That's everything, yeah.
I would think one of them would get the vote, and that's going to be the majority anyway.
One of who? I'm sorry?
We got 2 at large on that. I mean, the unincorporated area ought to have a vote on that too.
Sure.
And that's going to be the majority of the taxable value here regardless.
But there's two citizens sitting on the board too, right? So they're not elected
If
officials.
we went with that weighted vote as being suggested, they wouldn't vote.
Yeah.
Man, I don't
Yeah, it's
see
just
what's
an
wrong
idea.
with just running it back to the legislative body and getting a thumbs up or a thumbs down on that whole body of work. I agree, Jordan. A majority, I see that as being, yes, is it cumbersome? It is, but we're talking about an item that's pretty critical.
And you're talking about 14 people out of 30,000
Yeah.
agreeing on how to do something.
And we know how hard it is to get people to agree, if
All
anyone
right, you're
does.
talking about
The board's work
one representative that
takes it back to
I'd
their,
have to go back, but I think like, when I did some checking, Heber City was like 18% of the total taxable value of the county. Or Midway with 14.
man, I think if we get buy-in from everybody, it shouldn't, I don't know.
You know, I'd like to get a starting box on this one.
Or two.
And I think that we could, there's so many, it's a mosaic of problems, there's 1,000,
So many things.
2,000 pieces to this puzzle. But I don't have a problem with the city appointing their own members,
I know.
however they decide to do it. If it's the mayor or the legislative branch, that can be.
The only reason we put that in because of the history we have
Right.
with Heberman
But
Boyd.
we do hope that there's more and more collaboration in the future, Steve.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking forward positively,
Yes,
right?
we are.
And I think, like on the section 4 item, that can be addressed in the bylaws, which means we can go ahead and create the board. As far as the approval of the board's work, I really do understand what you're saying about how that can, one entity can really punish another if they want to. But we are talking about 14 people out of 30,000. And if we can't get to that type of consensus, we're probably not on the right track.
I'm fine with trying it, I'm just afraid that it would slow the process.
I think you're right, I think it would. But it might be better to go slower and go together than.
Okay.
You got unity.
You know, obviously it's taken us this long to get this.
Just to even get this far,
Yeah.
that's what's fun.
I think the good faith
What,
effort
13
will go
years
find
now,
out.
right?
Yes, probably so much younger than, but
It
anyway.
was really easy, I just had to put it on the agenda, I didn't know that was it. I didn't know that was what had to happen.
I'm just saying, I think it's a good faith effort that shows that we are trying to work together as hard as possible, even though, and I think that's going to,
So let's push for your representative Midway. Do we know who they want yet? Or can we have them?
No, we just tell them that we're ready to have them. Yeah. They need to, what I would hope, we'd get a final copy of this agreement and present it to them. We adopt it, then present it to Midway and Heber.
Our idea, we can adopt it next week, right?
Yeah.
Mostly.
Is it on our 18th agenda? But we're gonna put it on.
We talked about putting it on.
So we adopted, then the city's adopted, and then we're ready to create the board.
Let's kick it off. Let's get it on our agenda for discussion / consideration.
On the 18th, I would like to adopt this, also have an application process for the general public to start out.
For those two
Excellent.
We
seats.
could probably use the same thing we use for like planning commission and whatever, right? Same application.
And then tell the city we need to have their appointed representative by the third meeting in November.
Yeah, give it a deadline for sure.
Yeah.
that's great.
We can do that next week.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'm okay with that.
Really appreciate
Thank you
all
for
of your
being here. I
time,
appreciate
all
it.
of your consideration on this. This is very
Heidi,
exciting.
one other thing while you're here, it's not on the agenda, but
Oh, Kendall.
we need some help,
Okay.
I guess. Remember, we had the interroll point.
We took the board reports, okay.
Well, I guess, we agreed to come and have a little, a group. Doug and I come to the county, it was Greg, but I come to the first one because he couldn't. And the city, Doug and Mike put together a proposal, or think this is on the annexation deal.
Oh, okay. That's what you
And,
meant.
and we brought some ideas. Heber had nothing, I mean, you're well aware of that.
Yes.
And we're hearing that there's no more, they don't want to talk on their side. The agreement was to come back and work that through together.
Yes,
And
it
we
was.
need to- Have you had any communication with them, Doug? They were gonna, from that meeting, they were gonna look it over and come back with some suggestions from Heber's side, and we've not heard nothing.
Okay.
Other than that backdoor approach they did that you caught on to and put it on the agenda
Yes.
to try to ignore it all.
Yes, yes, that's true. Okay, I think the reason why, and again, this is just my best guess. I think the reason why the city has not come back to work with you as directed and as agreed to in the first place is because of the mayor's email that I sent to all of you.
Yeah.
And because of staff, of course, being appointed and under the mayor, I think that's why the progress hasn't been made according to what I was hoping we could. Right?
Well,
And
in
all of us.
the sense we're getting is that Heber City doesn't want to be under any commitment.
That's what the mayor said in his email.
Yeah.
Yes.
They don't want to be tied down to anything, so willy-nilly they can do what they want out there.
Heidi, do you have a recommended solution to this problem?
I do. And it's something I thought of just from our last city conference. I just talked to Doug about it on the way in. I think we need to look at all the entitled density already given in the whole valley, every entity. We need to total it up and see how close we are to those growth projections from the governor's office. And it might be that we're a lot closer than we think with the density we've already given in the valley. And if we're close or above it or on that growth projection, then I think there's your solution right there as far as being able to work with you and accept the density you've already given and not and just stick to that and not give more.
Can we, is it out of line or too much if you could ask to either put it on an agenda
Sure.
to see if the council will say one way or the other?
Okay.
Understand the mayor has his opinion, and that's fine.
So will we proceed with the county
And see if they're
in
going to...
the agreement for the annexation plan on the North Village or further north?
All of that.
Their proposed map. And I guess if the majority says, hey, we're good, we're out, we don't want to continue that discussion, we don't want to be tied down, whatever it is, then we know. If the majority of the legislative body and the mayor says, hey, or the mayor says, hey, we ought to continue this discussion, then at least we know that. And I know it may change in the next couple of months, but at least we have an idea where we are today.
Okay, so I will get on the agenda, and this will be next week.
Wait for tomorrow.
Will we agree to proceed with the county on working on an annexation agreement? Something along the lines that you proposed, or whatever it is, right?
Well, and even if it's not,
I don't think
Or
we ever
not.
proposed, I mean,
No,
proposed
we had
that.
some suggestions and some
Yeah, but that was
proposals.
just,
That was a shot over the bow.
Oh, yeah, rough draft, yeah.
Nothing more than
It's a
let's
very tight
discuss.
shot over the bow.
Yeah.
Very
Well, that
tight.
was a shot over the bow, but it's an agreement they've already agreed to with Fred and Edges, because that was basically pulled out of the Red and Edges agreement that was already been signed by the city.
But at least, you're saying just put
Yeah.
it on as a voting
Yeah,
matter.
hey,
just-
if they want to say, look, we don't like that, but we're okay talking about this,
And
great.
I tried to do that. by the
I
way.
appreciate
I
that.
did. I said, look, we certainly can agree to road sizes and density and parks and water and et cetera. You know,
Okay.
some of the very honest
Well, sorry to
basics.
give you an assignment, not trying
That's
to create
fine.
work,
No,
but if we
that's
kind of
fine.
had a direction so we knew whether to just bag it or whether we need to keep working towards it. That would be-
Okay. So does that mean that how they'll want to know? They will want to know how much flexibility you are willing to negotiate with compared to
Yeah.
the original
I
proposal.
think we're
Well,
open to,
I think we need to know what you want to do. I mean, I think that's a discussion point.
So really, that's just basically a rough draft for you.
Well, if
You
we
guys
can
mark
just go
up
ahead
any
and
way you
call
like,
it. I'm
right?
sorry, Dan.
I'm just
Okay, well, I'll
saying,
mention
just
that
take
it's
what we
based on
proposed,
privileges.
and if you hate the whole thing and you have your own version of one that you'd like to create from scratch,
give us something back.
right? We just
Well,
want
certainly densities have to be at the top of the list. That's got to be the sticking point.
Right.
City densities are much, much higher than what we've created the districts to serve those areas for, the zone that's currently in place. However, the densities are still really high. If they think the densities that are there are good, but we might need to tweak them, then that's a great discussion. If they think, no, we want the same density that's available in the city, then that's more stacked units, that's multiple family, that's a
Well,
different
And
discussion.
we've done things recently that will reduce densities even
Doug
more
was
out
just
there.
telling me
So-
that's wonderful.
No,
It's a
bonus density.
totally a discussion and just being willing to discuss it.
Okay.
And flexible, I say we're very flexible. Is that
I
fair,
appreciate
guys?
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's very kind of you because, you know, like I say, Doug had a really tight agreement that certainly some things, there's no way that the city will ever let you audit them. Sorry. That's
No.
not going to happen.
No.
I don't think I had an audit clause in there, did I?
Yes.
Well, and
And
even
that's
if you
okay, I
did, all you
understand
gotta
where
do is
you're
say, are
coming
you
from.
high? We're not gonna do that.
Well,
And then we say, oh, okay, well, maybe we can get over that, or we can't, so.
Right, but thank you so much for.
Heidi, there was
expressing
nothing
your
on an audit in there.
Well,
I
there
would
was-
never have thought
there
of
was
putting an audit in there.
Oh, I'll dig it out.
It was DRC. It was going through a DRC process.
No, it was something after the fact, Doug, and maybe it's just so buried in there that I've mixed it up, but that
Well,
was something.
yeah, just-
Whatever it is,
Yeah.
let's,
So
generally,
let me
let's
bring it
have.
up, and I will express to them your flexibility and your very great interest in doing this, and I will see how the vote goes. But
The
like
only
I
way
say,
we can move forward
I
positively
think-
together is to continue discussing this, in my opinion. If we just say the heck with you,
Is
that
there-
doesn't get us where we want to go.
Is there any way that it's useful to put it off until after the election or not? Do you think that's useful or not?
Well,
Depends on how fast
forward.
You tell us, Heidi.
No, I understand.
I think it's an election issue, quite honestly.
Well, there you
I
go.
think-
It might be an election issue. Maybe we should explain this more to the public over the next 3 weeks, and so we can really get some more input.
Maybe something to talk about tomorrow night.
It's
12.
true. That's true.
Isn't that wrong?
It's true. But you see what I mean? I'm not sure how
I think we went for
certain it'll
vote
be
now,
now.
probably they vote it down.
I think it'd be 3-2 vote against
Oh, against the annexation proposal.
any annexation agreement.
It might be, I really don't know. We didn't
Well,
ever put it to the vote. I just
yeah.
know where staff's coming from. I've certainly seen where the mayor's coming from. And I'm trying to be flexible with you because I do not think more density
That's all we
needs to
can
be
ask.
granted out there.
That's all we can ask.
And I do think the planning is super important out there, and you've done a lot of that already. Why are we trying to disrupt that when the county has the water and the sewer? Okay? I just want you to know that there is a development, not a development, but there's a new proposal of other types of development in that area that you haven't considered in the past, and I'm not really able to talk about it right now because it's not certain. And I'm only going to bring something to you that is certain. And so that's something that I'll certainly be discussing with you once we get more of a proposal put together. And certainly that could affect water or sewer out in that area. But I don't think it's going to affect it to the point to be dramatically, radically different than what you've already planned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Can I just make one comment? Because I was in that Heber City meeting, and I just think there's a total misunderstanding between the two public entities. I think that maybe giving that draft that Doug did with the preface of saying, hey, look, this is just all the conditions that could possibly be discussed is in this document. We just put it in a list, but I think the city council took it to be etched in stone, and it was never meant to be. And so I just think there's just a misunderstanding in that way, that they thought this was take it or leave it, and it was just a starting point to discuss. And I really don't think that was understood by the city, if that makes any sense.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit,
Okay.
because I was in that meeting when we met with them. I think it was made very clear to them, staff that was there. I think it's not a misunderstanding from staff, and I guess this will be a political statement, but it's what I said before. They don't want to be tied down to any commitment. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Now, they might have conveyed a misunderstanding to Heber City Council, but there was no misunderstanding in that meeting that we had with them when they presented that, here's something to start looking at. That was made very clear.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're talking two different,
And the night I went to the city council meeting and we discussed it, I think I made it clear that that was a starting point for discussion.
Okay.
But, you know,
I've listened to that
well, it
meeting.
is true,
Okay.
and I listened to that one too, but remember Tony's PowerPoint in there, he said this was a, how was it worded? It was acrimonious. I can't remember the exact word he used, but it was a contentious process. It was a contentious process and a hidden process if they were to agree to a development or an agreement, an annexation agreement. You remember that terminology? And then you got up and said, this wasn't our intent.
Right.
But that's still in the minds of the majority of the council, I believe.
But then Tony's suggestion, remember, was to go through an entire master plan update with a consultant again, when we've already spent money to do so much of that kind of outreach and public misunderstanding last year, and nobody has the stomach to go through all of that again. Okay, I'm sorry.
For the time.
Well, I think this
That's
course
true
is good,
too.
so.
That's true too.
Yeah,
Guess
yeah.
what? They
Well,
come
thank
back-
you for asking.
We want to keep talking.
Definitely, definitely.
Thank you for being
Sorry
here.
for bringing up that.
Thank you very much.
Notes on this discussion, and what we change this agreement to,
I'm sorry,
the open space agreement.
yeah, so we'll talk and I'll
Yeah.
update it, yeah.
Okay.